Okay, welcome. I'm going to show you how to do a few things in portrait. These are all in your book. In the interest of time, I've already laid in a kind of a head shape, and I've got the midpoint noted and a little notation there for the nose. This is sternomastoid, sternocleidomastoid. The head is just egg-shaped. And I'm going to run the sternocleidomastoid down to the pit of the neck, and then the trapezius out to the shoulders, head, neck, and shoulders. Here's clavicle. Just to give you an idea of what I want in your portraits, all of this much. The first thing I do is make a notation for where I think the eyes would be. This is Photoshop. It's not Connie Crayon, which I'd prefer to demo in, but I'll do one in class for 3/4 view so you can see that. First thing I do is just make this sensation very lightly, pencil or Connie Crayon, of this shape. And to broaden it out, it really is this shape. The nose is down here. It's the eye socket. And you can see that I didn't get myself too worked up about how to draw it. Just drew it like this. The top of the eye socket is the eyebrow, coming out here, and the bottom is the cheekbone. Inside that eye socket, I will then locate the eyes. And the reason I do this is because it's a lot easier to locate these two things. And if I'm off by a little bit, it's not a big deal. The eyes are simply a diamond shape, this shape. So your eyes have an axis to them, and the high point is not over the low point. And again, the nose is here. So this would be the right eye, the left one as it faces you. And we get an axis, short, long, short, long. So we get this kind of axis. But it doesn't really matter. Just make a diamond shape and fill it in. And inside of that, you make a darker shape still, and that's ample for the eye. So I'll do the same thing on my portrait. I'm not gonna finish it. By doing this, I'm locating the eyes between here and here, as opposed to somewhere in this head. And they're about in the middle of the head, as you know. There we go. The next thing I'm going to locate is just the bottom of the nose, and it's going to be somewhere between halfway and 3/5, and everybody has a different idea. You'll see, you'll have a model. If you don't have a model, put it about here. I mean, you can guesstimate that thing. Noses have three basic shapes, and what we do with the nose is we just worry about the shadow underneath the nose. So here's a downward pointed chevron, here's just a movement straight across, and here's a triangle with the apex at the top. That's how we start the nose, just by making that assessment of who we're looking at and what the angle we have is. Within that, we'll then assume a light source from one side, predominant side, kind of like this. And then within that, I'm going to bump up my opacity now and make my brush a little smaller. This is where we put the nostrils, just like that. And that's a suitable nose. You have to look at particular shape. Nostrils are not that shape. More commonly, they're a comma kind of shape. They can go down, they can go up, they can do any number of things. But for now, I'm not going to sweat that too hard. I'm just going to put this in as a location. It's going to be right in the middle of the face as the person is facing me. Underneath the nose, halfway, a little less than halfway, a little more than halfway, you have the line that divides the lips. And that's all I do. Understand at this point, if you look at your drawing, you go, wow, I didn't leave enough room for the chin. This is your chance to modify that part and to get enough room for the chin. So I'm making this little modification, putting a little value in, so on and so forth. The mouth has a midline, and then it has muscles to it. It has two above, well, three above, I should say. There's one like this, and one in the middle. And then it has two muscles below. But we don't draw it like that. All we're worried about is what's the midline? Does it go straight across? Often it curls down like this. It might curve up at the corners. We just don't know yet. And then we've got these two roughly diamond shapes, or triangular shapes, I should say. And it works like this. So if I'm going to erase this now and do it again. So if I'm getting after a mouth, I'm just going to find that midline. I'm not going to fuss with it. I'm going to draw exactly, do what I said, is draw a triangular shape. Remember, I think it's really important to be able to draw to a shape without outlining the shape. Then I'm going to darken it in the corners where the little fat causes a little overlap or overhang there, and darken it right in the middle where the mouth has most of the body of the upper lip. And then underneath, I just make a shadow. I don't worry too much about this lower lip as far as shading it. If it's dark red or some kind of dark lipstick color, I'll do something like this, but I will break that shape up and leave a lot of light in there. If you outline it, you're really going to screw up your illusion, and it's going to go flat on you, so you don't want to do that. And I don't do that. So let's put just an upper lip on this. We'll make this a guy. I always draw women, we'll draw a man. The lips are going to be a little thinner. And then we'll put a shadow for the bottom of the lower lip. And we're in pretty good shape here. I've got to put the eyebrows in, and the eyebrows will follow this eye socket. I usually draw them when I'm working from an actual person about halfway, and then I'll decide later what the completion is. Your ears, as we know, are going to run somewhere between the eyebrow and the bottom of the nose, and I usually execute those as this kind of shape. It's sort of a triangle with the tip here cut off of it, so we don't do that last part. If you can imagine this shape, and then I just cut it, and this is the shape that I draw. You will see this little flap here sometimes not so much. And now I have everything on the face located, and I'm in pretty good shape. Let's come in a little closer. This is the point where I can start working with some values. I'm going to drop my opacity here in Photoshop. I have to drop my opacity down, but you won't have to do that. So we'll just assume a light source. There's usually going to be a little triangular shadow here, and the head is going to cast a shadow on the trapezius and the shoulder as well. This is a reasonable start point. I'm going to come back up in opacity now so I can actually do a little drawing. This is where I come back and I start noting particular things, like the actual line of this eye. I have a nice guide here, so I don't have to guess too much. Remember, you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eye widths across at the front of your head. So I'll pull this in a little bit. So I'm noting the particular line where the eyelid will shade the eye, and then I'm going to note the pupil and iris like this. I don't have to draw circles in there, and I recommend that you don't. And perhaps the corner of the eye. Even when a model wears heavy mascara, don't draw a line all the way across the bottom of the eye. It's going to mess up your illusion a bit. I can work my eraser, in this case I'll use white, to show an eyelid, like this. Or I can work with a pencil line, like this. A little hard to control this in Photoshop for some reason, but you get the idea. I can do either one or both things. The darkest part of the eye is going to be this inside edge right here. And that's a landmark I want you to look for. It'll run all the way to the bridge of the nose, and it runs down a little along the side of the nose. It's going to be the same on both sides, probably a little darker on the unlit side of the face, but you'll see it like this. Let's come back to the nose now, and I'm going to note this plane break, where one side is a little darker. I'm going to broaden the nose a little bit, and modify the shape now. I'm also going to put a little bit of value coming down the ridge of the nose. And then what I'll normally do is erase back here at the tip, and this is going to show the actual shape of the nose, right at the tip of the nose. So I have that, and now I can come back and make a notation for a nostril, and I'll just make this kind of notation, and this kind of notation on the other side. If you see a ridge or an edge around the nostril, that's fine, you go with it. And I'm going to put a little plane break in here just to jazz it up a little bit. And now I can come down to the philtrum, which is going to go right to the points of the mouth. Because my light is coming from this direction, this philtrum will be not shaded, or will be shaded, and this other philtrum won't be shaded. So you're going to get a look like this. Now I can come back. I have white, so I'm going to pretend it's an eraser. I can come back and get a little bit more specific once again to the shape of the nose and what I'm seeing. Just continually modifying. Back up here in the eyes. I'll bring this light into the white part of the eyes, but you don't ever draw white in there. You keep it. There's a value inside your eye. I'm going to come back now. Get at this nasal crease, like that, like that. There's often a shadow under the nose, kind of like this. And now I can come back to the mouth draw it a little bit better. A little more particular here now, and a little more particular to this line. I don't think it's important to draw that line all the way across, but I will put it in where I think it's relevant. And then a little movement down here where you have this, you carry a little fat right here in the corners of the mouth, just above, and I'll erase back to get that noted as well. A younger person is going to have less creases along their mouth. Now I'm erasing. Again, every time I do this, it's to groom the shapes and to modify the shapes. I'm actually in a pretty good spot right now, and I can start putting some lights on here. So the light is going to come with my eraser. It's going to happen on the cheeks. This ridge of the nose is going to catch a little light, often right here along the temple and just above the eyelid. That's going to catch light. And honestly, this is a fairly good portrait at this point. I'm going to darken the ears a little bit, and now here's where, just as you will do, I'm going to draw a particular line for them. So I'm coming in, I'm saying that's his ear. There is a lot of material inside the ear that you will get into in sculpture class, but I don't deal with it much here in drawing class. Like that, that's ample. Do the same thing on the other side. And again, I'll come in and be a little more specific here. I'll come down, and this angle is going to be important to get a likeness. What is the angle of the cheek here in the jaw? Usually it will turn at or just below the corner of the mouth. It'll turn back in. Sometimes it'll turn above, but not that often. So I'll turn it. I'll modify this neck because I was a little in that direction. There's not going to be that much room. And you have to remember, simply because you've drawn a thing or an element doesn't mean that you won't have to revise it. The drawing is a constant series of revisions, and it's up to you to make those revisions. I feel like this eye got in a little close. I'm just going to pull it back now. There we go. I can disguise this. I'll just make it dark. Erase a little bit. There, I'm back in shape. I'm going to erase here. And then I'll come in a little dark again right here. I'm going to darken the top of the pupil and iris, because that's going to be in shadow. And then if you want, you can always put in a little light here. Kind of like that. As far as hair goes, hair is a complete shape. So if your model has long hair, you're going to have to deal with that as the shape of the hair. For this guy, I don't have a model here, so I'm just going to assume I'll do a little drawing first with black. I'll pull a hairline down, I'll find a part, and I'm just showing the shape of the hair, like this. And the same thing on the other side. Normally, in a drawing situation where the model is in front of me, I don't outline the hair. I just draw like I draw anything else. I look for the shape and the value, and that's what I do. Having done that much with my Connie crayon or my pencil or whatever I'm drawing with, then I'll come back with a smaller line, and I'll put in a few things that suggest hair, like this. You don't have to go crazy with this. It's just enough indication to tell people what you're seeing, and then right back to values. Normally when I'm drawing with a pencil or even with a Connie crayon, I try to move in the direction that the hair is moving, but I don't want to have a whole bunch of particular hairs. And that's it. The rest of this is just going back and fixing small things and getting closer and closer to the likeness of whoever it is I'm looking at. But you have to remember these particular shapes that we're going to use for the mouth and for the nose. Okay, we're going to talk about the profile, in some ways easier, in some ways a little harder. I have seen this conceptual idea presented to students. There is a frame of thought, a type of thought that says a skull is, or a head, is an egg frozen onto a sphere. And you can see how it kind of looks like a skull in profile. And yeah, I get it. The problem is that it's not practical for portraiture. In fact, it's not practical for a lot of things, because what happens is you end up looking like you've got a mask tied onto skull by the time you're done, and it just doesn't work. It's not practical. So we're going to do it a slightly different way. I looked at a lot of old masters, and I realized, especially John Singer Sargent, what he was doing was basically just drawing that contour line dead accurate. I don't mind, frankly, if you are in a profile situation, if you sort of set yourself up like this for the overall size and shape of the profile. But I don't want you to fill in, and I don't want you to make too many lines because they're going to be inaccurate anyway over the fullness of time, and it's not going to help you. So if you need guidelines, just make a few guidelines, and then we'll start drawing with some precision. What I do, what I noticed Sargent did, is he comes down this slanted area of the top of the head called Widow's Peak, and then you have to make a determination about the angle of the forehead. At a certain point, just before the halfway point, this is going to dip in, and you have to know that angle as well. So that's all we're talking about are angles, directions. And we're trying to draw a good contour line for these things. So we're going to come in a certain dimension, and then we're going to come back out. And again, it's an angle and a length. So you can ask yourself, what's this length? What's the dimension here? How far from there, this point, is this point? What's the dimension for that? So establishing this length, a big deal, and establishing, more importantly, this angle. From that point, we're going to get another line and another angle. Now, many people have rounded noses or they have funny squared off noses, and that can be done just the way I did it just now. You just create the angle first, though. And that angle can go this way, it can go this way. Seldom, but occasionally it heads down. Normally when you think somebody's nose is tipped down, it's their nostril that's moving at a downward angle, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's just assume we're coming in this direction. I'm going to do a little erasing. So, back to brush. I'm going to go about this far, and I'm going to square it off, and I'm going to head back. Again, what's the angle and what's the length? Does it go, when it goes back, it hits what's called the philtrum, and the philtrum is another angle. It can go straight down, it can head back, it can head way out. You have to look carefully and make a decision. Also, the philtrum will start at a certain point relative to the front of the forehead or the back of the eye. So you can see that there's a length here that's important to get sorted out. Where is this turn? I'm going to make it go not quite straight out. Often this philtrum will curve slightly. Normally what I'll do is if I see the curve and think I can draw it, I'll put it in like that. If I can't, I'll put the angle first and then draw a curve into it. At a certain point, often the length of the philtrum is about the length of the bottom of the nose, but at a certain point, it's going to cut back in like this. It may go straight down. It very seldom curves in a rounded fashion. It's usually straighter than you expect it to be, and then you get the division of the mouth. This does not go back very far like that. It doesn't even go like this, guys. It's not that far. So you got to be careful and sight it. Often you can use this nasal crease right here, if you can see it, to sight to this point right here where the mouth is going to end. But I'm not going to pursue it that far. I'll just come here and let's say it's this way. The mouth is a triangle, like so many things. The bottom of the nose is shaded as a triangle, just like that. And then the lower lip. So the lower lip, like everything else, it can angle this direction, it can angle back, or it can go straight down. In this case, let's just pull it straight down. And then below the lower lip, you have another angle in, which is where your teeth reside. So we have all these angles, this stair-stepping kind of thing, moving down the face like that. But you have to be really careful, and this requires really careful drawing. And then to the chin, same thing. We can go straight down like this. We can move forward like that. Or we can continue to move back like that. It just depends on whom you're looking at. So let's just say we're coming straight down. The movements that you're seeing here, the lengths of things, hang on, my eraser set it really low opacity. Okay. The lengths of things are easy to measure, really. From the bottom of the nose to the midpoint of the lips, that's one measurement. You can approximate that measurement a second time, and it'll get you about to this division here where the lower lip meets the chin. And then you can make that again, and it's going to get you about to the bottom of the chin. Now, chins can be square, they can be rounded, they can be tipped in like I just did with an angle. If you see a rounded chin and you're having trouble drawing it like this, often what I'll do is I'll just draw it as a series of squares like that. And what's this angle of the skin below the chin or below the jaw? And then I'll clean that angle up later, just this way. Normally down here, it's another triangle. So we have a triangle right here, we have a triangle right here. We're going to get to a triangle around the eye, and we have a triangle down here. Let's put the eye in. The top of the eye usually is along a line about where this forehead dips in and becomes the nose. So the top, not the middle, is going to be about here. This length right here, this distance between the front of the eye and the indentation at the top of the nose is very hard to calculate, and all I can say is be careful and be prepared to redraw it. The axis of the eye is like this. It's at a slight angle, and eyes are presented as just a triangle. Then you locate the eyebrow, and what happens is you have a whole space that's about this shape. If I drew it, it would look something like this. Here's the forehead. It's tipping into the nose, and you have a shape like this, and that's where the eye's sitting. Inside of that shape, you have this triangular shape of the eye itself, and then we'll just put a lid in here so you can see what's going on. So once I've shaded it, it's pretty easy to do the rest of it. I can make notation of the lid if I think it's necessary, and so on and so forth. Very often, this angle, if you pull it on down, it creates that little lower lid for you, this angle that goes across the eye. And I'll just keep playing with it until I get it correct. Notice I'm not doing this. That's a really poor illusion, and it's not necessary for you. You also want to know if this whole part of the face is forward of this part of the face, or if it's on a line with, and so on and so forth. So you have to be careful about those kind of measurements, and guys, you just have to make them. Eyebrows, like everything else, I usually work the first part of the eyebrow, and then when I'm confident I have that in place, I'll come to the second part. As far as the ear, well, where is the ear? There is a line from the corner of your eye to the chin. And if I take that line and measure it a second time, that gets me to the back of the ear, like that. Now I know where the back of the ear is going to go. It's going to be right about here. So I can erase some of this other stuff, and I know where the ear is going to be. At this point, top of the ear about aligned with the eyebrow, or more or less, bottom of the ear aligned approximately with the bottom of the nose. You don't want to let the ear creep forward on the face in this direction. Most students do that, and it's not going to help you. You're not going to be happy with what happens. Again, for the ear, I don't do a lot of stuff in here. I might shade it a little bit, and I'll start the jawline. I rarely pull the jawline all the way around with just a line, because it tends to create that mask effect that I talked about earlier. So we'll take that line out. I promise you there are ways to get to it. As far as the neck, in the olden days, we all believed that the neck moved at a kind of angle like this. I see that less and less now for some reason. Let's just make an ordinary neck then. So I'm going to pull this down like this, and now I'm going to work back to the back of the head. You do have a space here, and you can calculate that space based on other spaces that you can see. It's going to be a variant of some other distance that exists in the face. I promise you that much. But let's just say it's about like this, and then I probably will have hair, so I'm not going to worry too much about the back of the neck right now. Some models will pull their hair back into a ponytail, and so you will see this, and I usually just draw it as it is. So if that's the case, I'm moving as a value area only, and I'm trying to match curves and so on and so forth. So here's the essential profile. Inside of this, I will look and see where the nostril begins. Does it touch this lower part of the nose? Is it above the nose? Is it this shape? Is it this shape? Is it this shape? It can be anything. But you want to be fairly, you want to look hard. And if you can't see, if you're too far away to see clearly, get on up there and take a good close look. I'll just put a little shadow here. I'm going to shade in the lower lip the way Sargent would have done. It's okay. If he can do it, you can do it. And now I'm just going to work some values in here. A little more values across the tip of the nose, and do a little erasing, and so on. I'll probably, very often I draw this part of the head too big when I start, and I will have to go back and redraw this section frequently. So if I need to, I will, and if I don't, I don't. So let's just cut it back, And now let's think about a couple of things. As far as, getting values in, very often you can put a little shading here at the front of the face. I did a pretty crap job of that. A little more careful here. You're going to get a cheek. Again, it's going to be fairly dark in here. You're going to get movement under here. I'm kind of trying to draw this with lines today instead of working with the larger brush. It might be a mistake. Let me not confuse you. So I'll come up here with a bigger brush. I'm going to drop this opacity down, and this is equivalent to smudging with your pencil. So I'll do this stuff. I'm going to work from the outside now and create a contrast area for myself, like that. And back with my eraser to get some light back on this cheek. And this is kind of how the drawing goes. It's really, the main requirement is to be very particular about this contour line of the front of the face. As far as getting the hair, it's similar to what I discussed last time when we were doing the frontal view, but I will usually look to see what's going on here right above the ear and what this distance is between the edge of the hair and the beginning of the eye, the corner of the eye, the end of the eyebrow. Take that out. And then we'll assume this model has hair pulled back. Again, I consider this to be a value area. I don't worry about drawing lots and lots of hairs, but I'm going to draw as if I were drawing with a fairly hard pencil here now and couldn't do a lot of smudging. It's going to be darker in here, and we talked about a ponytail earlier. If that's the case, it's going to move out like this and down, and that's what I'm going to do. I'll just make it a value to get started. And I will look for the lights and darks of these things. And then there will come a point where I will put in, if there's hair that's falling away or slightly wispy, I'll put those in last. I'm going to go to my larger brush now so I can get some real values going in here, show you what I'm talking about. A little value in this way. Ooh, that's a little dark. Get my eraser out, start bringing lights back into it. And I'll just keep developing this thing until I'm fairly content with what's going on. I'm going to come now with a darker pencil, if you will. I'll get a little more particular about the shape of the neck. I'll probably move it down here. I'll look for the shoulder, some of that, just to give it context. If I need contrast, like I felt like I needed it back here to show light perhaps hitting the back of the neck, in it goes. If I don't need it, I don't worry about it. I want you to study this, and I want you to be prepared to use these symbols, the triangle here, triangle here, triangle here, triangle here, and find that contour and keep developing it until you're convinced that you have that contour when we draw in class. I will demonstrate a three-quarter view for you in class. Okay, thank you.